So people used to paint their houses with a lead oxide paint. Obviously they don't use lead anymore, it's incredibly toxic, but back in the Industrial Revolution they used this, and what they noticed was for some reason their houses were turning black over time. Now this could be explained because back in the Industrial Revolution they were burning a lot of coal, and this released sulfur oxides like sulfur dioxide, which is also responsible for acid rain, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, so what they noticed is that they could change the colour just by adding sulfuric acid and then hydrogen peroxide to this paint. See, the reasoning was that lead oxide was white, but lead sulfide was black. So they paint the submarine white with lead oxide, and when they needed the submarine to be black during the night, they tipped sulfuric acid over
It's actually very educational.
It is, yes. So they tip sulfuric acid over the side and make it black. But when they needed it to be white during the daytime, they pour hydrogen peroxide, which is an oxidizing agent, and also used to bleach your hair.
Wow.
Sulfuric acid, though, is a very, very strong acid, so I would not recommend trying this at home.
Isn't it the strongest acid in the world, or like the...
No, it's not. That would be fluoroantimonic acid, but that's not necessarily...
How smart is this guy? How smart are you, Mr.
Really smart. He has like a plus in every class.
Rawr, I have a question.
My bad.
Wouldn't it be harder to spot a submarine in the daytime if it was black?
I would not think so, because if it was a cloudy day, which often it was, if it's very far out at sea, things tend to kind of fade into white clouds and blue, and white just seems to be a lot harder to spot near the seaside. But obviously, you could be wrong in certain situations.
Have you ever narrated a movie?
Wait, who's talking with you? Because I
Rawr, will you date me?
Do you accept friend requests because I want to send you one?
Yes, no, I'm perfectly welcome. Broaden their horizons and listen to science stories, I'm more than happy to.
Rawr, will you date me?
Rawr, will you add me, please?
Oh God, thirsty for you.
I'm kidding, I would never.
It's the fame. Rawr, have you ever narrated a movie?
No, I haven't.
Is this your real voice, Rawr?
Wait, how do you unmute people that you
It's
self-mute?
close enough to
Unblock communication.
So it's your fake voice. That's kind of depressing.
Last question,
Well,
Rawr.
I mean, it's kind of close, so...
Guys,
Rawr, can you say your real name, just like one sentence? I'll tell you my name and you can say it.
your name's Maggie. Guys, I have a question.
My name's Maggie, that's my friend.
What is your
No,
question?
I don't care too much.
It's Amy Schumer.
It's my first time here, and
Starts with
I'm
M.
Brazilian. And can you tell me
Ashley.
what is it?
So who wants to hear about the discovery of gun cotton?
Me?
This is Rain's story.
Once upon a time, there was a bit of a piece of shit. And this man, this particular chemist, was very fond of using sulfuric and nitric acid in the kitchen, which is the dumbest fucking thing I can think of. So, what this man did one day was he spilt sulfuric and nitric acid on the kitchen counter, and the cheeky fucker thought he might as well wipe it up with a kitchen towel. Now, at the time, gun cotton had never been made before, but as we know, these towels are made of cotton. And cotton is multiple cellulose fibers strung together, more or less. And what happens is the mixture of sulfuric and nitric acid actually nitrated it. And well, here's a little example. You know, trinitrotoluene is known as TNT.
Yes.
And you'll notice that a lot of explosives have the word nitro in it. Nitroglycerin and nitrotoluene. And this is because, this is because normally nitrogen gas forms a very strong triple bond between two of the atoms. Now, to get back to that state, nitrogen really wants to get back to its gaseous state. So when it reacts, it releases a lot of energy. So, yes, anyway, so he wiped up this mixture of nitric and sulfuric acid, and then his wife, bless her, used the towel to pick up one of her hot stoves, or one of her hot pots off the gas
There's
oven,
somebody hacking in
and
this server.
and it blew up. Well, it deflagrated in her hands. Needless to say, he didn't get any pussy for the later few weeks. But, I mean, he was really in the doghouse after that.
Rawr,
Can you
tell us
talk
a story
about acid rain?
Acid rain, yeah.
Ah, okay. Not necessarily a very long story, but it is quite interesting. So you find nitrates and sulfates and nitrates, which can... Alright, so diesel engines operate at quite a high temperature, And as we know, we've earlier that nitrogen is really a rather stable gas, and because diesel engines operate at a much higher temperature than petrol engines, you'll find a lot of nitrates being produced in diesel engines. Now these nitrates go into the atmosphere as sulfates do as well. They go into the atmosphere and they join with water. Now there are multiple reactions, and I can't draw up the mechanism in the chat or anything, but you can look this up for yourself. But there are multiple stages of the reaction, and eventually it forms sulfuric or nitric acid in the air. Now I'm no expert, but I believe you'd rather have nitric acid falling on you than sulfuric acid, and obviously these acids are in very low concentrations, but you'll find a lot of limestone statues particularly, which are made of calcium carbonate, tend to erode very quickly in urban areas, and that's why it's just the acid reacting.
Hey Rawr, I have a question. How old are you?
I'm 19.
Oh, you're very bright.
No,
kid.
you're not.
I am thinking
Are you serious?
You sound like you're like 42.
the
Or can you
trauma
say,
of having to say
can you
goodbye
say how
to you.
particles move in a hot state?
In a hot state.
rapidly.
Now that's a very, very, very loaded question there. They do move with higher kinetic energy and in a random order, and that's to do with entropy. But if you're talking about how molecules actually move, you get simple harmonic motion between chemical bonds.
Guys, shut up! I can't hear him.
So, this is actually how spectroscopy works, and you've touched on quite an important issue. So, how they identify compounds now is they shine infrared through them, and they see at what wavelengths of infrared are absorbed by certain types of bonds. So, for example, around 1,700 centimeters, or sorry, centimeters to minus one, you would find that you get a carbon double bond to oxygen. And they've used this to identify so many compounds, very powerful technique for identifying it. And the way that works is the bonds themselves are vibrating and moving in a harmonic fashion. So imagine two balls connected by a spring. Or if you want, you could imagine two testicles connected by a string if it makes it any more fun for you. But anyway, so what happens is these two testicles are bouncing together and apart. And
Başta oraya saklandım. Ondan sonra dedim ki buradan gözükür dedim. İnsanların içine gireyim dedim.
What?
Can you tell us about the story about Krampus? Krampus, you know?
Shut the fuck up. Get the fuck out of here.
Talk
Can you
about
tell
Krampus.
the story on why 666 is such a tradition?